Hello, I am Marie, and welcome to part 2 of how I made my German Renaissance dress. So if you didn't see part 1, that's how I made the bodice, and I made that using the simplicity pattern that you see on the left here, and this part I'm going to talk about how I made the sleeves and the skirt, which I used the McCall's pattern here, the lovely Italian Renaissance McCall's pattern, basically as a basis for how I was going to make the sleeves, and then I had to draft some of my own parts and pattern pieces that I wanted to add to it to make it look the painting at the beginning of this video. I didn't have to do any pattern alterations for what I'm going to call the poofy parts, so like the white poofs at the top and the elbow of the sleeves. I just used this McCall's pattern pieces, they were great. And then for the in-between parts, in between the poofy parts, I actually folded those into 3 sections and then like drew lines and then cut out 3 different pieces because I needed the brocade, the velvet brocade, in that pattern to make up that section of the sleeve. I did not have a pattern for the little crisscross strips that go over the poofy parts, and I'm sure that there are technical names for all of these things, but I don't know them and I'm not going to go look them up because I need to get this video edited together. So if you know what those are called, please enlighten me in the comments below. So for right now we're going to refer to them as crisscrossy parts. So didn't have a pattern for that, so I just decided that I was going to cut out an immense amount of 1-inch strip wide fabric, and I decided that I was going to make it about 6 inches long. I know they didn't need to be that long, but I was going to trim them because I'd rather have them too long than too short, because you know, you can always make things shorter. It's really hard to make things longer. I cut out so many of these where I felt like that probably is what took the longest of this dress. I then took them and I folded them over and then sewed a straight line down them, so they didn't really have the nicest finished back, but they had a nice finished front and you weren't going to see the back anyway because it's dressed over the poofy part. I then attached them in a V shape to the non-poofy parts of the sleeves, the parts that go in between. As you can see here, you can see how I folded it into that pattern piece from the McCall's for this section into 3 sections, and then did the brocade, velvet brocade. I basically just like literally folded it into 3 sections and then drew lines and cut it out. But here I am putting the strips about 2 inches apart, and then putting them in a V formation. I was very careful to look at the painting as I was doing this, because there are the 2 sections with the strips going over the poofs, and it's called like, I assume it's called like slash and poof, but not quite. It's a variation of slash and poof, which is kind of the technical name for it, but not exactly. So this variation of slash and poof, and it has the strips going in an upward, so the V is pointing up at the top, and then it has it where the V is pointing down as it goes over the elbow. So basically I did the same thing for the top and the elbow, or the shoulder and the elbow, where you have V's about 2 inches apart, pointing up or down depending on what the painting said. It looks very odd when it's not all technically like put together yet, like that in-between stage where it kind of looks like an alien. It was really quite odd. Here I am gathering the shoulder poof. Just, you know, I did a basting stitch and then pulled it, and there we go. Then had to like, I kind of gathered it too much, and then I'm spreading it out so the gathers are even across the shoulder. These were definitely the most complicated sleeves I have ever put together. Also, the sleeves with the most parts. I believe there were 23 pieces to each sleeve, which is just a lot. And here you can see it looks kind of like it still looks like an alien because it's not together yet. I'm attaching the elbow pouf here, and it still doesn't look like a sleeve. Like, there is no semblance of a sleeve in that in-between stage. I'm now gathering the top of the elbow. Of course, my sewing supervisor was present to make sure I was doing this correctly. And if you can't tell, my sewing supervisor is my cat. I then attached the elbow pouf to the other straight part that goes over my hand, the fourth part of the sleeve, or the fourth section of the sleeve. I did this all machine sewing because I had, like, you know, as I typically do. I gave myself like a week to finish this before I went out of the country to go to Oxford, because I made this dress kind of as a congratulations gift for myself for getting into the Study Abroad at Oxford program, which was amazing, and there will be more videos of that to come, so stay tuned, because it was absolutely amazing. But now it actually looks like a sleeve, which I was so excited about because it didn't look like a sleeve for the longest time. But then it finally looked like a sleeve. I was very careful to pin all of the little crossover pieces to make sure that they stayed exactly wherever they were supposed to while I was machine sewing, because sometimes they like to wander. I then went through and I serged them, so you can see I cut the crossover pieces way too long, so I just kind of wanted to make it all nice and clean because it looked disgusting. So I just serged that end because that beautiful white material that I used for the poufs, it's gorgeous, but it frays like nobody's business. So I just was like, well, you know what, we're just going to serge it and it'll be great. And it also takes care of all of the really long crossover pieces that I didn't need to be that long. I then went ahead and set the sleeve in the bodice. If you have not done so already, you can watch part 1 of the making of my German Renaissance dress, and you can see how I made the bodice. I will link it at the end of this video. So as you could see in that last part of the clip there, I set the sleeve and then I went back and kind of like poked in where I needed the straps to be, because it was just easier to do it one step at a time. Now the skirt. The skirt was its own beast. Originally, as you can see in the portrait, it's supposed to, you know, the velvet's supposed to be gathered or pleated, it's supposed to be pleated, and then you have the brocade at the bottom, which is very beautiful. My problem is that the velvet, which is upholstery velvet, is far, far too thick to be pleated and then sewn. It would create way too much bulk. My machine was not going to sew over the pleats. It barely sewed it when it was just folded over. So, even though I really didn't want to do it this way, I didn't really have another option because I couldn't. I tried to hand sew it and it bent my needle and hurt my fingers. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to flip the skirt. So that's what I did. And I put the brocade at the top instead of the bottom. And it worked out pretty well. I think it looks fine, which you will get to see at the end of this video or in the next video where I reveal the dress as it is fully made. Or you can go look at it on my Instagram, which is linked below. But there were a lot of pleats. Lots and lots and lots of pleats. As you can see here, I am doing knife pleats, and I'm just using my fingers as measurements because that's how I do things. I just kind of use my fingers because I know I measured to my first knuckle, which is about 1 inch. I then sewed down all of the knife pleats and attached it to the velvet, which worked much better because I just had to sew 1 thickness of velvet in the brocade versus like, how many is it when you fold over a pleat? Like 3 layers of velvet, which was, whew. I think I would have broken my machine. I almost broke my machine just sewing like double the double thickness of velvet, because my machine is not an industrial machine, it's just like a normal sewing machine. So here you can see I have attached the brocade pleated part to the velvet, and you know, it looks pretty good. Not exactly like the painting like I had hoped, but still not bad. I then went ahead and I attached that part to the bodice, which you can see the inside, the guts of here. I just, you know, and then I just normally sewed it, attaching it all together. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Come back next week and you will get to see me wearing this dress as I stroll about Oxford, which, y'all, it looks, I felt like a princess and it was great. So hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, and thank you so much again for watching.